Hey everyone, so before we get into this, just want to let you know that when we were shooting the first half of this video, we miscounted Mission Impossible movies and accidentally keep calling this one the 9th Mission Impossible movie. We just kind of spaced out, and like we say in the video, we haven't actually seen all of the Mission Impossible movies. So just remember, every single time we say it's the 9th Mission Impossible movie in the first half of this video, it's because we miscounted. We really mean the 8th. And now the same joke about how much Tom Cruise runs in his movies. Run away, baby, before I put my spell on you. You better get away, darling, cause everything you've heard is true. Your poor little heart's gonna end up alone, cause Lord knows I'm a rolling stone. Yeah, you better run away, baby. God, I'm gonna miss this joke. Which we kind of ran into the ground. Running!
So, today, guys, we are going to see Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. The first of two sequels that now have their first parts are very awkwardly having a part 1 forever stamped into the previous installments.
So, 2 years ago, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning came out. Dead Reckoning Part 1, at least, as it was called at the time, because at the time, it was supposed to be part 1 of a 2-part sub-series within the Mission Impossible franchise.
The plan was also to shoot them back to back, but then the pandemic kind of screwed with the plans of that. And then the actors and writers' strikes, which both happened around,
literally the same weekend.
Pretty much the same weekend that the last Mission Impossible came. Both of those strikes pretty much collided and hit the crescendo of the labor strikes of 2023. So basically, they had a whole lot of extra time to make some adjustments after the last movie came out.
And supposedly, as of right now, this is the last planned installment in the Mission Impossible franchise.
Or at least the ones starring Ethan Hunt.
Yeah. It's kind of weird to think that this just might be it for the franchise that basically turned Tom Cruise into an action star.
After 29 years of on and off doing this franchise, this is the last time Tom Cruise is going to be could very well be doing this.
And it's kind of weird. Like, it's almost 30 years of continuously making these movies. They kind of stop at 9, but it's also a case of, well, if you feel like you don't have enough gas in the tank for any more, then it's a good time to step away.
Especially because I don't think Tom Cruise can do any more death-defying stunts with this particular formula anymore. Now that he's kind of resorted to wacky shenanigans, there's a freaking biplane stunt in this one.
Whether or not Tom Cruise is just going to retire from doing ridiculous action scenes on his own or not is yet to be seen, because we don't know what Tom Cruise is going to be doing after this.
I mean, he's got that Alejandro G. Iñárritu movie, and from what we can tell, he's still planning on going to space to shoot that one movie.
Yeah, so we don't know what's going to happen with Tom Cruise, but what we do know is he's probably not going to stop running until his knees give out.
At 62, he's lucky he still has his original knees.
But it's also a case of the Mission Impossible franchise has just been one of those kind of episodic movies where, well, up until now, they've been episodic, because up until now, every movie is basically a standalone movie with a couple of recurring characters and some plot lines that can be easily exposited about in the first 10 minutes to get you up to speed before it's time to go in and go into the main espionage plot.
I mean, 4, 5, and 6 kind of led into each other, and then 7, 8, and 9 are also kind of led into each other.
Yeah, but those you can contribute to the fact that those are when Christopher McQuarrie started getting involved in the writing room.
Yeah. Christopher McQuarrie has been with this franchise basically since Ghost Protocol, where he did uncredited punch-up on that. And then he basically has been co-helming the franchise with Tom Cruise since then.
And everything since then has been, let's see what insane heights we can push Tom Cruise's slowly aging body to. Like, let's have him hold his breath underwater for like 15 minutes. Let's have him halo jump. Let's have him hang out of the Burj Khalifa. Hey, there's a giant cargo plane. How long can we get him to hang off the side of it?
And now we have this, what could be the final Mission Impossible movie, it's kind of interesting to think what they are going to do in this movie. There's always that one stunt that they put in all the marketing, but there's also a lot of the times a stunt that they don't really bring into the foreground just yet.
Like, they've been advertising the hell out of the biplane stunt, and from what I've heard, we're not even seeing half of what they're doing with that stunt.
Yeah, but then again, we've kind of really haven't been jumping onto the advertisements for this one.
And then there's the thing that this and the last Mission Impossible are both kind of weirdly prescient in the fact that they're both about something, and that something is Tom Cruise, the last movie star, fighting AI as a concept.
Which it felt very prescient when the weekend that the last one came out, the entire industry basically shut down primarily because there was disagreements about how to use AI in the industry.
And as a result, it made the movie look a lot more like, oh, they're making a statement. And the fact that they're following up that storyline makes the statement seem all the more dialed in. And, yeah. I mean, what else is there to say about this? Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames are back.
Haley Atwell is also returning from the last movie.
Also, can we just note that Ving Rhames is in this, but he's not in the Lilo and Stitch remake that's coming out, where he definitely could have played Cobra Bubbles again if they wanted him to.
Well, we could just sell for Courtney B. Vance, I guess. But we're not going to see that one. But we're not seeing that one right now. We'll see that later.
Yeah, but for right now, yeah, what else is there to say about a Mission Impossible movie? Because these aren't exactly movies where you talk a lot about like I said, these are basically crime procedurals. They are just basically enough characters that you are just like, oh, I think I understand it, with like whatever exposition they throw at you before they actually get to whatever the action is.
And we're just kind of gonna jump into this. Like, we didn't get into the franchise until very late in it, so it's not like we're having a massive sort of existential crisis on the fact that it's ending or anything.
Like, we didn't actually see a Mission Impossible movie at all until the second half. We saw Mission Impossible 5 in theaters, and it was the first Mission Impossible movie we saw beginning to end.
And then we watched 4. We still haven't really watched 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. From what we've heard, 1 is good because it's a Brian De Palma movie. 2 is bad in not the fun John Woo way, but we've also heard that it's got all this John Woo action, so it's like awesome in the way that John Woo movies usually are. And then the third one is a J.J. Abrams movie, so it's kind of hit or miss depending on who you're talking to about how it.
Yeah. So I think that's a lot of rambling leading up to just, we're interested to see what the final reckoning is for Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt.
So, see you after the jump. So, it's a crime that we have to wait another year for the stunt Oscars to actually be a category. Because the people whose job it is to say, how do we do this as realistically as possible without killing Tom Cruise and the actors who are playing the bad guys, should probably get some kind of award for figuring that out.
Yeah, because Tom Cruise and the entire stunt team and everyone involved in this movie did everything in their power to make such insane action sequences, to the point that there was an entire, 15-20 minutes of this movie where I could barely breathe.
And conveniently, that's during an extended scuba diving sequence that they have been hyping up for the prior 20 minutes of the movie, just to basically say, hey, if the characters in question don't do every possible thing right for this particular stunt, then Ethan Hunt dies, and it's going to be incredibly painful for him.
Yeah. So you're watching this entire sequence just holding your breath, because it is just one of those sequences where you're completely in the same mindset as the character.
And it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, if you're afraid of drowning, maybe skip this movie.
I don't know.
Because,
fun fact, drowning is one of our biggest fears.
Yeah. So, that is an action sequence that is on the list. A lot of tension is built up because
it's a Chris McQuarrie script, so obviously there's going to be a scene where Ethan Hunt nearly drowns, and we all have to just kind of sit there, and it's a really long sequence, so we all have to just kind of sit and wait for it to be over.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the biplane fight that has been built up over and over and over again in most of the trailers, even on the poster, where it's just like, hey, look, we got Tom Cruise hanging off of biplanes.
And it is such an insane sequence. I can't imagine that they actually convinced people to let them do this whole thing for real.
Yeah, there are some moments where you're like, God, I hope that's green screen, because otherwise we might have been dealing with the fact that Tom Cruise actually finally died on one of these. Like, the man has a death wish. Somebody help him! Anyway, Angela Bassett is in this movie again, and after a long absence from between the Fallout and here.
Yeah, so she basically skipped 7.
Her character is now the President of the United States, which the one thing I find the most hard to believe about that is that a former CIA director in a world that is canonically plagued by conspiracy theorists would somehow end up becoming the President of the United States, but hey, it's fiction.
Yeah.
And anyway, also Nick Offerman's in there for about as long as like Cary Elwes was in the last one.
He's basically in almost every scene Angela Bassett's in.
He's basically there just to be like, hey kids, it's Nick Offerman. Applause!
And then we have Haley Atwell and Simon Pegg and Tom Clemente all here.
And proving that Ving Rhames probably could have been in Lilo and Stitch, Diana Waddingham is in here.
Although one thing I will bring up is just the fact that with the entity there is a certain and all this AI stuff. At the beginning of the movie they mentioned that there is a sort of a cult that has formed around the entity, basically somewhat worshipping it as a godlike figure that will bring about the salvation of humanity. That doesn't go anywhere, really.
Yeah, there's never a point where Ethan's in like a crowded city street and like a bunch of followers of the entity are like being used as like human shields to stop him or anything like that. It's just kind of a thing where it's like, oh hey, this doomsday cult just got formed because this thing kind of exists out there.
And there's no and it really doesn't come back around for most of the movie. Like, it pops up every now and again.
Like, I think there's one scene at the end where one character who doesn't even get a name in the actual scene or anywhere else in the movie does something, and you're supposed to believe, oh, is this paying it off, or is this just one scared person acting on their impulses?
Yeah. And there's also a moment earlier in the film where it's earlier than that one, where it's like that, where there's something like that, but really it's not 100% clear. But it's just one of those things where it's like, we live in a world where if a cult is around, people will sort of make themselves known at a certain point.
The fact is that this is a movie that's built on espionage, intrigue, and the idea that Tom Cruise is basically able to do whatever he needs to prove to people that he is basically invincible, or it basically has a death wish and somebody needs to help him.
Yeah.
But, yeah, when it comes to this being an inventive action movie with a somewhat intriguing and tension-building plotline, this does about as well as the other Mission Impossible movies up to this point. I wouldn't call it this big, groundbreaking thing. It's just kind of nice that we have these big, iconic movies to end on. If this even is the end of the franchise like they're saying it is, because it really doesn't end on, like, the most definitive of endings for a Mission Impossible movie.
But it feels like an ending, but it also, if they wanted to, they could announce tomorrow that Mission Impossible 9 is coming in 2028.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a case of, well, if this is the end, we're not on a decent enough high note. And if this isn't the end, well, then it's just another step in the journey.
Could very well be the end. Tom Cruise is 62 now. He's not getting any younger. I can't imagine he wants to try to kill himself with these
insane stunts anymore.
Speaking of which, something that gets introduced in this movie that screwed me up when it comes up early in the movie is that canonically Ethan Hunt is like a 62-year-old man from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. Where it's like this badass manifestation of destiny, as he has been called in the movies. He's from Madison, Wisconsin.
And also just kind of breaking the fact that we have spent all of these movies kind of under the impression that Ethan, despite the fact that he's Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise does visibly get older, he has been depicted as pretty ageless.
But here they have to actually slap an age on him by literally saying, it's been 35 years since you've been recruited to the IMF.
Here on the dossier is his birth date in big, bold, black letters.
So instead of just being like, hey, Ethan Hunt is essentially ageless, even though Tom Cruise is visibly growing older, here is an actual concrete birth date that we now have to kind of stick to.
Yeah.
But now that we've gone completely off topic, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning is a good ending to a franchise that has had a lot of ups and downs, and I really think that if they wanted to keep going, they could, but if this is the end, well, couldn't have gone out on a better note.
Yep.
So, that's it for right now. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave in the comments down below what you may or may not have thought of Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, and maybe the Mission Impossible franchise as a whole. And don't forget to tune in next time when Nika Nala Krista.
That was terrible.
I'm so sorry.
You should feel bad.
Bye.